welcome to my knits and latest WIP. My name is Karen and I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. And I can tell you today we are having a dreary, rainy day and I'm not going outside. I've been outside for a walk this morning, so I thought let's set aside the outdoor activities and join you online and share with you what I have been working on this past month. So thanks for joining me. Grab a coffee, grab a tea or a beverage of choice, and grab your craft, and I'll show you what I have been up to. Here on the screen, you are seeing my finished objects for the month of October. I have made some hats, scarves, a couple Christmas items, a sweater for myself, as well as a blanket and two tiny little stuffies that I will share with you. When I go through each of these projects, I'm going to let you know about the designer, the tools and materials that I use to create this project, as well as any changes I made, and if I was to do it again, what might I do different? During the month of October, I have been on a mission to stash bust. I was traveling, doing two trips, one a day road trip with a knitting friend, and we were going north of the city to visit a number of yarn shops. And I also traveled to the next province of Quebec for a week with a girlfriend, and I knew I might be buying yarn, so I wanted to go through what I had now and start to use up those single balls that I have way too many of. And so I thought, okay, it's time. So the first item that I pulled out a single ball of yarn, and with this single ball I decided to make this knitting badge neckerchief, and the design is by Nicholas Heed. And here it is. I am going to hold it up really close so you can see the pattern. And with this pattern, it calls for 4mm needles, or a US 6. I used a 3.5mm needle, US 4, and this ball of yarn was in my stash. It was given to me by a friend who loves to thrift, and it was an older yarn. It's called Robin Culbine Crepe. And when I measured or weighed this yarn, I had 20 grams. So I knew I couldn't do too much with it, but I thought for sure I could get a tiny little neckerchief or bandana. So I've done this pattern before. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. And what I like about the pattern is Nicholas, within the pattern, shows you 3 different sizes. So you can make something tiny, medium size, and larger size. And really, it totally depends on the amount of yarn that you have, because you actually start at one point and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and getting wider and wider and wider. And then when you've used up your yarn, you just bind off. So that's what I love about this. It can be as tiny as you want, or as large as you want, dependent on the yarn that you have. So great stash buster, and it's a really cute little neckerchief. I've seen some people wear it like with a little ring here, and this one I am going to give back to a friend who gifted me this yarn. I put my tag on it, and she can either gift it, keep it, or she can give it to charity, because that's her option, as she shared this yarn with me. Will I do this pattern again? Probably. I've made it so many times, and it's a great stash buster, and it makes some beautiful gifts with mohair. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous piece, and it knits up so quickly because of that elongated stretch in between, and it's all garter stitch. So it's a quick knit, lovely piece, and yeah, I'll make it again. I have a friend who loves to go to thrift stores, and she does find some awesome items. And when she finds yarn, she just keeps adding it into a bag. And then when I visit, she gifts me this bag of yarn. So I have a number of pieces that I have the yarn, and then I have to come up with what am I going to make with it. So this next item, my friend gave me this Lily Chin, and I'll hold up the label, a signature collection, a very fuzzy yarn. Let me tell you a little bit about this yarn. It is, I don't even know if there's anything. It is made in Italy. It's 26% wool, 21% acrylic, and 48% nylon and some viscose. So a lot of unnatural fibers, but it is so crazy soft. And so I had, I think, 200 grams of this. So I thought, okay, what am I going to make? And I thought I'll start with a hat. So I selected the Lotus Flower Beanie, which is a purchase pattern, but I had purchased this a number of years ago because I've made a number of this pattern. I've made a number of hats, and I thought it would work perfectly for the gauge with this type of yarn. So it calls, this pattern, the Lotus hat, calls for 5.5 millimeter needles, a 9 US to 10 millimeter needles US 15, because there's, in the pattern, it has sizes for 3 different weights of yarn. So it's brilliant for this piece. And I use this pattern for the shape with this weight of yarn. I thought it was going to be ideal, and it worked out great. So I did make a pom-pom, and there it is. But should I put it on or not? I made the pom-pom out of the same yarn, and I could leave it off because it is a beanie, or I could put it on to make it more toque-like. So I'd love your opinion. I'm going to keep it off for now. If you have thoughts, put it in the comments below. And yeah, so that was the first piece. I still had yarn left over, so I decided to make a second item with this yarn, and I'm going to share with you the Arnie mittens, and this design is by Jenny, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I love them. They are so comfy and soft, and it's, my hands are tiny, so it's a little bit of a looser knit for me, but for somebody, I think they'll be still a little loose but fun knit, and a fun mitten to wear. The pattern calls for 5 millimeter needles, US 9 worsted weight yarn. So, and they say worsted weight yarn held double to make it super bulky. This was a little bit bulkier yarn anyway, not super bulky, but what bulkier. So I used a 5.5 millimeter, and the mittens took 54 grams. So I think it's a great combination. I put my little tag on there, as I always do, my KarebearKnitwear tag. So I put that on the mittens along with the hat. Great little set. There was still yarn left over, so I thought, okay, let's keep going and use up this yarn. Remember, I'm stash busting month of October. So I decided to use the Sophie scarf. And I modified it slightly. That this pattern is a purchase pattern from Petite Knit, and I've made a number of Sophie scarves. So the reason I say modified, because this was a thicker yarn, I ended up using 6 millimeter needles because I wanted it to be a little more flowy, not as tight as I did the mittens. And what I did was I started, as the Sophie scarf does, at the tiny edge, and I just continued to knit and I weighed my yarn, and once I was just about halfway with what I had left, I started decreasing. And the reason I say modified Sophie scarf as well is because the Sophie scarf is knit, it's garter stitch, and I chose not to do that. I used stockinette stitch, and the reason I did that so that it would match with the mittens and also with the hat. So a great piece. It's a really, it turned out to be a really long scarf, but I think it's really cute. It'll be cute with the hat and with the mittens. It took 87 grams and I used it all up. There might have been a little bit left, but that was it. So hat, mittens, the scarf, it's going to be a great piece that I'm going to give back to my friend who's so great at thrifting. And again, she can keep it, gift it, or give to charity because it was a real deal, this yarn, and it's a really cute piece. And we are going into winter and there are people in need. So if she doesn't need it, I know she'll give it to somebody who will love it, or she'll donate to charity. Because I had a tiny little bit left, and if you've seen any of my other programs, I love to make these little toppers. So I did make a little topper that you can put on bubble bath. You can put this on a bottle of wine or a little champagne bottle or whatever if you're giving as a gift. So I thought in case she gives it to one of her cousins or an auntie of hers, this she might want to put something extra with it. And so I made her a topper. So that is all of that bundle of yarn that she had given to me, and I hope it goes to make somebody really happy. Yes, another lotus flower beanie, the design by Bee Knits Handmade. This is a purchase pattern on Ravelry, as I mentioned earlier. I made this a number of times and I continue to use it with different weights of yarn. It calls for 3 different weights of yarn when you read the pattern. You go from 5.5 millimeter to 10 millimeter. For the US, it's 9 to 15. So depending on the thickness of your yarn, this hat will work, and she gives all the great instructions for you to make these beautiful pieces. So again, I had one ball of yarn in my stash, and it was the Baroque Gusto, and I only had one ball, and it is 45% wool, 45 acrylic, 10 viscose, and I thought, okay, this is perfect for a hat. And it's like a super bulky yarn, so, and I still have some left. I didn't know whether or not I would be able to make a full hat with that 100 grams. And now that I think about it, I should have known it would work. But anyway, I used 70 grams and I mixed it with a little bit of Malabrigo that I had left. And that's the deeper, richer mauve that you're seeing in this hat. And the colorway of that Gusto it's really interesting because I'm just going to look at what it says here for the colorway. It was color 1985, and at first I thought it was kind of a gray, but it has a gray with hints of purple, or so I thought, if I mix it with that Malabrigo, it was that Mecca yarn, and I thought it looked great together. I didn't have a lot of that other yarn, but I was using it up, so I kind of broke it up in the middle there, which I still think turned out pretty cute. And voila, a great hat. The difficulty was finding a pom-pom that actually fit this coloring because I wanted something that was going to pick up the mauve. I could have just left it without a pom-pom, which would have worked out just fine. But instead I decided to go hunt for a pom-pom. And there are beautiful yarn shops in my neighborhood. I'm really fortunate. And in Kensington Market here in Toronto, there's a lovely shop called Yarns Untangled. And I looked online and they have beautiful pom-poms with amazing, gorgeous variety of color. This has a little bit of gray, specks of little bit black or dark gray at the end, and a perfect mauve. And when I went into the shop and brought my hat, the girl was absolutely lovely to help me, and this looks good. So whether the person who receives this hat wears it with the pom-pom or without, I think it's a great little piece. I will tell you, it took 70 grams, and I used of the Gusto, and then I used up what I had of the Malabrigo, which was about 13 grams. And I used an 8mm and a 9mm. 8mm on the band because it's a bottom-up construction, and I used 9mm on the body of the hat. And yeah, so I finished it with that knitting. Would I make this again? Yeah, for sure. Like, the pattern is just so beautiful with the texture, and then with this yarn that is also has thicker and thinner areas, it just turned out to be a really beautiful hat. Again, this was a stash buster piece, so it will be gifted or donated to charity. So I am wearing my Freya sweater designed by Inga from Knitting Traditions. I follow her on Ravelry, I follow her on Instagram, and she's a fabulous, fabulous knitter in Norway. She knits for herself, for her children, her daughter, and she is presently expecting, so she's knitting for her other child to be. This is a purchase pattern, and it calls for 4.5mm needles, US 7, and yarn to meet the gauge. And I decided with this pattern to use Drops Soft Tweed, and I'll just share with you. And this is the first time I used this yarn, and it is 50% wool, 25 alpaca, and 25 viscose. And I used the color, I think it was called Raven, so it's very dark, but it's tweedy, so it has some fabulous color. I'm not sure if you're going to see this well today because it's so dark and rainy and dreary, and I've turned on all the lights in this room, but it's still quite dark here in Toronto. I used a 4mm needle in creating this sweater for myself, and which is a US 6. And let me tell you a little bit about the construction. It is a top-down construction, so you start at the top, you have some short rows. It is a raglan, and you work through the raglan, then you go onto the body. The body can be box, or you can make the body fitted. When you go onto the sleeves, you can do them short sleeve, long sleeve. You can cinch or just leave the sleeve as is. And at the neckline, you have the option to do a crew neck, a mock neck, and a full turtleneck. The turtleneck, I believe, was larger than this, but because I have a smaller neckline, I didn't do it as high as or the recommendation, so I kept trying it on, and I got it to the point where I love it. So what I really want to tell you about, I think this sweater, I actually think this is going to go viral in the knitting world, just like the ranunculus. And the reason I say, it's not like the ranunculus, but the reason I say that is because the pattern gives you so many options. And when you go to the Ravelry site, the test knitter pictures are all there, and there are multiple sizes, so it will fit everyone. And the test knitters all used a different yarn. So there's pictures to show the 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 weighting of the yarns and the different flow of the fibers because they're using these different yarns. And I mean, that in itself just goes, oh, I want to make one like that. I want to make one like that. I want to make one like that. And so that is really, really helpful. And just all the options in the sweater, I think that makes it a sweater that you can make many times and it will look different with different fibers. And that's what I love about the Ravelry site and all the samples from the test knitters. And then the samples from all of us who are starting to make it, because those pictures are there and available as well. So the details in the sweater that I really love, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there is a cable down the raglan. There is a cable, and I'm going to get really close. So I'm going to turn it so you can see it. Under the sleeve, it's so dark. I might have to put extra video in, and I will add it in. There is 3 cables under the arm at the side of the body, and then the entire bottom band or the lower portion of the sweater is all cable. And I know for some people they might go, what? I am not knitting all those cables. But here's the best thing. Inga has a video to show you how to do the cable, and it's the same cable that's used on the cuff, the cable that's used on not on the neckline, but along the sleeve and under the body and at the base. She gives a video to show you how to do the cable, and she shows you how to do it without using a cable needle. How brilliant is that? I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So this is a great fit. I made a size 2. I did the boxier version. I'll walk backwards. I may still have to put extra video in, but I want to just show you what it looks like. This is my Freya sweater, and I'm so happy. And if I did it again, is there anything I would change? I don't think so. This size, I think, works for me. I will probably, maybe I have the option, I'll change the neckline, but everything else I did exactly as instructed. I found it easy to follow the pattern, and yeah, I'm going to be making more of this. Just like the ranunculus, I think I have 5 ranunculus for myself, plus I've made for others, and I think that's what's going to happen with this sweater. So that's my Freya sweater by Knitting Traditions. I follow a number of knitters and designers on Instagram and on Ravelry, and I came across on Instagram Susan B. Anderson's Woodland Egg and Owlet, and I just went, yeah, I have to make that cute little owl. So it's a purchase pattern. Her pattern was on sale, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm buying this pattern right now. So I did, and I put the woodland egg in my queue and just thought I'll get to it when I can, but I just thought it was really super cute. And I'm familiar with Susan's work because I am a member of the Toronto Knitters Guild, and in a previous year, along with our membership, we were given access to use Craftsy for the year, and wow, I took advantage of that. I learned how to cover chairs. I went to shawl creation, knitting, design courses, and there was a course on making stuffies, little toys, and I had never done that before, and it was Susan's course. So I made a little elephant and a hippopotamus and a rabbit under her direction, and it was amazing. I learned so much to have that instruction, and it was the instruction on my time because I could log in and do the course according to what worked for me. So I did that course. I learned a ton from her. And then after that, started following her on Ravelry and on Instagram. And I saw this owlet. And therefore, I had to make it. So as I mentioned, it is a purchase pattern. It calls for using 2.75 millimeter needles or a US 2, fingering weight yarn, and I think about 70 meters of yarn. So I used a 2.5 millimeter because I don't have 2.75s, and it's just a tiny little animal. So I thought, okay, it'll work. And I just used a light DK. And I think it took 60 meters with the DK yarn for me. So the first, because I made two. So the first one that I made, I had some Estelle DK natural dyeing yarn, and I used it all up. And I used that with a Highland alpaca DK. It was 04, a medium gray, and here it is. So that's that gray yarn, and I used those two together. And you use the lighter color on the bottom of the owlet as well as for the egg. And I'm going to put a video in here so that you can see how this little owlet goes into the woodland egg. And so for the first one that I made, though, that was the yarn that I used. Oh, also for the beak and for the feet, I used a Charisma that I had because it needed a little bit of a rustier yarn. That's what she showed in her sample one. So I used a Drops Charisma, and the color is 82. So it's kind of a rustier yarn, and that very little, you need so very little of that. So basically it's a bottom up construction. You're starting with the egg, and then you move into the bottom of the owlet. You change color to do the top part of the body. Then you make the head, and the head starts with the darker color that you're using. In my case, it was that medium gray. And then you switch over to the lighter color for the face of the owlet. When you're knitting those pieces, and then you attach the head. But when you're knitting the body, she actually tells you where to purl. So that's where you're going to put the feet. Then she tells you where to purl up near the top of the body of the owlet, because that's where you're going to pick up for the wings. And then when you're making the head, she tells you to purl at certain points, because that's where you're going to pick up for the ears. So you pick up for the ears and you knit them on. You pick up for the wings, you knit them on, and you pick up for the feet. When you're making the head, you do need some polyfill to stuff the head. Not much, but you do. You don't need any stuffing for the base, because what the egg part of this owlet goes into the body, and that's what props it up to sit. So now I did use for the first time, and it worked, were the safety eyes. I bought the little eyes at Michael's. It was a pack of 3 sets of eyes. I wanted the amber color. All they had was blue, so I went for it. And I think it cost like $4.99. It was inexpensive. And she tells you when to stop and put on the eyes, and she showed, you can see by the pattern and her images where to place the eyes. But I struggled. And I've tried these safety eyes before, that I bought somewhere else, and I couldn't use them. I just gave up. But this time I was like, I'm not giving up. So if you have any tips on how to work with these, I really need some help, because I so struggled. I actually boiled water and put the little plastic backings into the boiled water, because I saw somebody had mentioned that on YouTube. So I did that to make that little plastic harder. But I just find in holding the yarn and holding the little front part and trying to push down on the screw, it's really hard to do. I've now thought, what if I had a washer and I could use the washer to push it down? Anyway, I struggled with that. I eventually got it for both the owlets that I made. But again, I'm not, I mean, I've made a lot of stuffies. I usually avoid safety eyes, but these weren't going to little ones. So I decided I needed to push myself and persevere and use them. So I did. I made the first one. I just loved it. I thought it was so super cute. My niece was coming to visit, and I put out her towels in our guest room, and I placed the little owl on the towel, and she just loved it. It's great. And so I was doing a road trip to Quebec City with a friend, and I decided, hey, this would be a great road trip mascot. So you're going to see some pictures here and at the end of this video, because we took this owlet on our trip to Quebec, and wherever we went, we took pictures with it. I was with a girlfriend. We left our husbands behind, and we had a ball with our little mascot. And we were on the island, and I'm not going to say this right because I don't have the right French Canadian accent, but we were on the Isle d'Orléans, and so we called our owlet Owlane. And so she traveled with us on our trip. And the second one that I made there that you see, the one that's a little more of a beigeier color, I didn't have the cream color that I had for the first one. I had used it all up, which was great. Stash busting October. So that worked out well. And for the second one, I have this wonderful alpaca acrylic. It's yarn, and it is it is a cream color, but I'm just trying to see. I don't think it's a fingering weight. I'd say it's probably maybe a lighter sport weight, but it worked out great. So I used that for the owl, the second owl that I made, and I also used a Highland alpaca DK, and it was more of a beigey brown color. And I'll just give you, it was a sand color, so it is O2 sand, and it is Highland alpaca DK. So I used that for the second one. Same coloring for the feet and for the nose, and I still had those safety eyes, so I used the same blue safety eyes in the second one, and it zipped up even more quickly than the first one. Once you do one, to do the second one, I find, like, if I love something, and we have a lot of little kids, but if I make one, I want to make the second one right away because everything's in my head, so it makes it so much easier to do. This is the Woodland Egg and Owlet. Susan has other patterns for stuffies and cute little items. I saw today, I was watching Yarn Over with us, Susie and Linda, and they were talking about an Advent garland that Susan has available on her website. Probably the kits are all sold out, but cutest thing. And they were talking about their love for her little creations that Susan does. And so check out Yarn Over with us, because Susie and Linda show some beautiful pieces and speaking to the creations from Susan Anderson. Follow her on Instagram, follow her on Ravelry. If you love making little stuffies, or larger stuffies too, I've made those by her, and the instructions are wonderful. She has great instructions, pictures, and do one, and then you can do the second one even faster. So this is the Woodland Egg and Owlet, and the design by Susan B. Anderson. I live here in Toronto in a larger community complex, and I have done some helping with our seniors in this community, as well as some weeding during our spring and summer months, especially through COVID, doing what I could to help out. And lately I thought, what else can I do here to give back to this community where I live? And I decided to offer a knit night and see if anybody wanted to join, and if there were people who wanted to learn how to knit, I would help out. So I put in a proposal to management, our recreation and common committee, and it was accepted, and last night was our first night together. And I wanted to pick a pattern for those who are learning to knit that was going to be easy for them to do. I wanted a free pattern, and I wanted something that was a lot of knitting, little purling if possible. And so I found the Simple Thing. It's a design by Melina Brell, and it is a beautiful knit. So it is a scarf with an I-cord edge. It's all knit in between. And when I read the pattern, I thought, yeah, this is going to work. It looks very similar to the Sophie scarf, but there are a lot of differences in it too that I thought, and things that I could alter to assist those who are new to knitting. So I showed this sample last evening. I thought it'd be good. There's two patterns that I selected, but this was the one that I've got the sample done for, and it calls for DK weight yarn, and they tell you to use a 4.5 millimeter needle or 7 US. And I had, again, stash busting, I had a ball of Nobel cotton from a friend. She had made a baby outfit. She had, I think there was about like 78 grams left, and she said, here, take it if you want to use it. And I think the color is taffy, so it's really beautiful with the pink and yellow, green, blue, peach. So somebody who really likes taffy colors, this would work for them. So I used 70 grams. I still had a number of grams left. So with those, I made a quick little topper that can go on top of bubble bath or what have you. And I thought that was perfect to use up the yarn. I have nothing left. I can't even show you the label because I didn't get the label. My girlfriend had tossed that when she gave me this ball. What I will tell you about the pattern, the start of it is a little more complicated because you're picking up on the side to make it a rounded edge. And then there's increases along here, and it's a make one right increase that she's doing in the pattern. And I think she even mentions just go halfway and then start the decreases. So that's what makes it really, really simple. It's a beautiful piece, and I think it's going to be easy for new learners to create this scarf. Because otherwise, they're making a swatch right now. That's what we started with. But then just to do a rectangular scarf, I thought, yeah, that's a little bit boring. So that's why I went looking for a pattern that I thought would be easy to do with assistance, obviously, from those in the room. And there are a number of people who do have knitting experience in the room, and I was so grateful for all of them because they're sitting at the tables helping everyone who's new. And yeah, so we started yesterday. We're going to go for once a week until Christmas holiday for those who celebrate, and we're going to have 7 sessions. So I'm hopeful that our knitters will finish this scarf for themselves or whomever they're making it for, and have a piece to take away with them. And depending on how things go, perhaps we'll get together again in in the new year and continue to meet during those winter months. This pattern, again, as I said, is a free pattern. It's on Ravelry, The Simple Thing. Would I make this again as gifts? For sure. I have a lot of little scarves, but as a gift, I think it's a great pattern. And with the DK weight at 4.5 millimeter, has a beautiful flow to it, especially with this cotton. So it'll be interesting to see the beauties that everyone makes. So The Simple Thing. The next item that I am going to share with you is the Snow Fern blanket. I don't have this one with me because I have already gifted this to a family member who has it on her couch, and I can show you pictures here, and I also took some videos, so I'll be able to share that as I talk about this project. I think I've mentioned this before in other sessions if you've watched anything earlier. I am not a blanket knitter. I just get really bored. And so when a family member had mentioned the need for a blanket, I said, sure, I'm gonna persevere, I'm gonna do this. So what I did was I looked for blanket patterns that had a busier design because I thought that will keep me engaged and interested in the knit. So I found this pattern by Kalerua. I hope I'm saying that right. And it's a Snow Fern blanket. It came out in October of this year, and I picked that. I had shown my sister-in-law a number of patterns, and she selected this one, and so off I went. It had a fair amount of cabling. It is a purchase pattern on Ravelry, and it calls for an Aran weight yarn, 5 millimeter needles, US 8, and it also calls for, I think, around 900 grams of yarn or something like that. So I used 5 millimeter. I got gauge with that, and well, I made a swatch, and I just liked the feel of that rather than yeah, it called for 5, and I used 5. So I did the swatch, and I really liked the way it flowed with the yarn that I was using. So I had selected loops and thread, and it's their Soft Classic, which is an acrylic yarn. I don't usually use 100% acrylic yarns, but I knew she was going to need to wash this, and she wanted a lighter color to match some pillows that were on her couch already. So this colorway is, the color is mushroom, and you'll see in the photos that it was a perfect piece for a nice accessory for her couch. So the pattern starts with a ribbing. There is an I-cord edging, which is absolutely lovely for the edge of that blanket. There are 3 different charts in the pattern for cabling, and the first chart and then the second chart you repeat a number of times, and then there's the last chart. And I think the blanket finished at about 44 inches wide, 48 or 50 long, somewhere in there. And yeah, really happy with it. What I would do differently if I were to make it again is to make the second chart. You had to repeat it a number of times. I would repeat it one more time just to give it more length, and that could have been the tension that I was using. For somebody else it might be different. So that would be the only change that I would make. It turned out lovely. Blocking a blanket is something else. So that took a bit of a challenge. I had to get it. I have a huge kitchen sink, so I washed it in the kitchen sink with some patchouli. And you do have to block it because of the I-cord edging, and so I had to pin that down. So I should put a picture in here because hats off to our partners, because I don't live in a very large space, and when I'm blocking all these things, I'm laying them all over our living room, under the stairs, wherever. And I had a photo of this, and it was taking up space. We were kind of tripping over it. Yeah, so the blocking turned out great. I was happy with the blanket. There was one, like you cast on a certain number of stitches, and somewhere in the pattern, I did notice at the end of one of the charts, the second chart, I think, on one of the rows, they put number of stitches at the end, and it was different than what we had cast on, but never in the pattern did we ever cast off. So I didn't know what happened there. I did reach out to the designer to mention that, but it was really easy to make. If you like cabling, it's not something you can memorize, that's for sure. I couldn't. It was so busy and always changing. And I did start it partway in October, and then I had to set it aside because I went on a road trip, and there was no way I was taking this huge blanket with me in and out to all the Airbnbs and bed and breakfast places that we were staying. So I left it here, and I took other road trip knitting with me, and I came back to it, and it was fine coming back to it. I had made lots of notes. I don't usually do that. I stick with one pattern, I finish that pattern or project, and then I go on to another one. But in this case, I didn't want to take it with me, so I had to finish it up. And yeah, that's the Snow Fern blanket. I'm not a blanket person. I had to push myself to get through it, but I was really happy with this pattern. It did keep me engaged, and that was my blanket for 2025. I'm probably a one blanket a year person, so I won't be making any more in 2025. We'll see what happens in 2026. So that's the Snow Fern blanket, and I'm happy with it, and so is my sister-in-law. So during the month of October, I was thinking forward to Christmas season that my family celebrates, and every year I make a Christmas topper. So the family members use it on their coffee bar. They put it on their coffee flavors, or on a bottle of wine, or a bubble bath, and I send that out to family and friends every year. And in the past, I've made angels, I've made the chimney where Santa's boots are sticking out from the top of the chimney. This year I found a pattern by Petite Knit that was a Christmas caramel, and it was a free pattern. It calls for worsted weight yarn, 3mm needles, or 2.5 US, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to go with this caramel. So I've made quite a number already, and I had to put them into parcels and send them, because I send across Canada to the West Coast and to the East Coast, as well as into the US. And so family members live all over, even Costa Rica. So I have had to get them ready ahead of time. So I'm going to show you some of these little toppers. This year she had the caramel, which was knit in the round, and it's she cinches it up at the top, and she cinches it there, and she stuffs it or just leaves it. But I decided to use that caramel and to cinch it at the top and make it a little bit wider on the bottom, and then it would fit on the bubble bath or the coffee flavors at the coffee bar. And so that's what I've been busy making, and I've made a number of different ones. I've been changing up, putting stripes and putting ribbons in, cinching at the top, a little bit wider at the bottom, and they're quick, easy knit. And as I said, it's called the Christmas Caramel by Petite Knit, and it's free. So I have been using what's in my stash. I didn't go out and buy any new yarn. because I'm stash busting. October is my month to do that. And so for the red, I've been using Highland Alpaca DK. It's color 08 in red. And then the ones that I'm working on right now, Highland Alpaca DK again. And this colorway is 01 Natural. And I think I have one attached. Oops, sorry for the noise. And that's the coloring for the natural one. And what I did, I just went to our local dollar store. Dime store, that's aging myself. The dollar store, and I buy these little packets of ribbon. The last one I bought was all silver. This one's all red ribbon, and I will be using that with the white to make these. I think I'm going to be making about 35 of these. They're quick and easy. They're a nice palette cleanser in between bigger projects, and so this is going to keep me busy probably throughout November, but I got to get going because yeah, if they have to be mailed, I need to finish them. So this is the caramel, Christmas caramel, with a little bit of modification to use it as a bottle topper for family and friends at the holiday time. So this next knit was so much fun to make. It is called the Grinch Arm, and the design is by Tangerine. And I have had so much fun in knitting this. It is a purchase pattern on Ravelry. It's a newer pattern. It calls for 2.5 millimeter or 1.5 US and a 3.5 millimeter and a 4 US with Aran weight yarn. And I used these needles with various yarn from my stash. So I'm going to tell you about this knit. So this is the first one, and you're looking at this going, what? So the way it works is this piece attaches into your Christmas tree. This goes around the trunk, this goes around the branches, and then this extends out, and on the end here you hang a bulb. So the Grinch arm is coming out of your Christmas tree. How creative is this? When I saw it, I just knew I had to make it because I have all my family members are going to love this, but I have a niece and a nephew who are going to go crazy when they see this. So, and I didn't buy any yarn. I did not buy any yarn to make this. I started with the Grinch hand, and I used Cascade 220, and I had moss, and I think I'm just going to tell you the yarn that I had. It was a Cascade 220, and it was 841 moss green, which I've used to make the Grinch stuffies as well. And then I used some leftover white, and I only needed about 6 grams of white. I needed 50 grams of the green, and then you need about 100 grams of the red yarn. And so I used Cascade 220. I think it's Harvest Red. Am I right on that one? I think so. Let me just... Sorry, I'm looking at my tags. It's 1922. Sorry, it's 1922 with the Cascade yarn, and I was using this up. I had it in my stash, and I wanted to use that. The white yarn I had left over as well from a previous project. It was yarn that I had purchased while I was in Argentina at the beginning of June. And I didn't need much of it, so I thought, I'm not buying yarn. I just decided to use this up, and it worked great for that cuff. And then, as I said, I used the Cascade. What's in the middle of this is a pool noodle. And so it's hard finding a pool noodle in the month of October and going into winter season here in Canada. However, I went to Canadian Tire, which is a larger hardware store, and they did have pool noodles. So I bought the pool noodles for both of these. And then I had this Velcro in my stash, and so I used the Velcro. And in the pattern, she explains how to do all this. You do need a hanger. I did need to buy, she calls it flower wire. And so I had to buy flower wire, really inexpensive. I got it at Michael's, which is a craft store here in Canada. And I bought the wire you need to form the fingers in the hand. I used a coat hanger in between here that I had to bend. And then you need the Velcro and the pool noodle. And Sharon's pattern is fabulous. She's got lots of photos. She gives you lots of instruction. This is a simple knit. I mean, you're cast on and ribbing. I did it in the round, which she did as well. And then she tells you how long to make it, slide it over the noodle. We did, you put the hand on first, and then you actually can sew the hand right to the noodle. I thought that was going to be hard. It was super easy. So just with the yarn that I had left over, I just quickly sewed that on there. And then one thing I will tell you, you don't cut the noodle, you just cut a little bit of the noodle, but you got to make sure you're cutting it so that it's in alignment with how the hand is going to position coming out of the Christmas tree. So that piece I will tell you is a tip, and I did put other tips in my notes section on Ravelry. And then I cut a little slice into the edge of the noodle to pull that Velcro through, and I also made a buttonhole. I'll hold it up close so you can see it. I made a buttonhole right here, 5 stitches. And then I closed it up again. I did it on the other side just so I could weave the Velcro through. Sharon actually sews hers, and great for her. I'm a terrible sewer, and I didn't know how strong I could make that, so I decided to do this with slicing the hole and doing the buttonhole. It was a quick and easy knit. The hand first, attach it, then this sleeve, and I also secured the sleeve by sewing it with red thread here so that it wouldn't come off the noodle. And I've made 2 of these. The difficulty is I have to ship one. So I had to make a big box and put the box together. And again, the second one looks exactly the same, except I've used, again, different yarn from my stash. So I had this lime green yarn left over from another Grinch that I made, and I used 50 grams of that. I used some Karen Simply Soft yarn. I had some red in my stash. It's Harvest Red. I believe this one is Harvest Red. Yes, 9763 Harvest Red. And I used up some Cascade 220, some Karen Simply Soft white yarn that I had, and I made the second noodle. So I have these 2 noodles, one that I'm shipping, and it was just such a fun knit, and the family's gonna love it. Like when they see this one, yeah, it's so cute. Thanks, Sharon, for sharing your pattern. It's a purchase on Ravelry. Check it out. So those are my finished objects for the month of October. Hopefully there was something there that piques your curiosity, helps you with your next project. For all of these projects, I do have links below to my project page. So any changes or that I've made in the patterns are all in the notes section on my Ravelry page. I've also included all the information in the links below for the designer and my inspirations to the people who inspire me, their podcasts. So Yarn Over With Us, the Nitty Stew, Knitting Traditions. I've linked all their podcasts below because that's where I get my inspiration, and I appreciate their podcasts. So I have been asked, how do you finish so many objects in a month? And there's a couple things that I'm going to share. First of all, mostly I only work on one project at a time. And because I stay focused on one, I can zip through it much more quickly. I'm not sure I'm a super fast knitter because I just don't know how fast people make projects, because most of the people I see are knitting more than one project at a time, whereas I focus on one. So I think that helps me to get through a project more quickly. Plus, if you take a look at these projects, a lot of them are really small. They're very simple. In a month, I might do one sweater and everything else is pretty tiny. The blanket was unusual. Plus, I was on a timeline with that blanket because we were traveling home. I wanted to finish it so that I could gift it. We are having some postal service issues right now in Canada. The government and the employees are sorting that out, and so I wasn't sure where we would be at in being able to send something, and I tend to use Canada Post first before I use any independent or other courier services. So I wanted to get that blanket done, so I was on a mission. That's how I get all these things done, but they're pretty small. I don't think I'm any faster a knitter than anyone else, but those are my finished objects, and I hope there's something there that inspires you. This is my latest WIP, What's on My Needles Right Now. It is a knit for someone special in my world. So let me show you this WIP. It is the motorcycle hat, and I have purchased this pattern. It is a purchase pattern on Ravelry, and I purchased it a couple years ago because I have made one of these motorcycle hats earlier. It calls for 3mm needles, 2.5 US, to use with DK weight yarn. I used 3mm needle on the band and 3.5mm on the body with the color work, mostly because sometimes my color work can be a little bit tight. So that's why I increased to 3.5 with the body of the color work. So here is my present knit. I am doing the Harley Davidson motorcycle hat, and I'm getting there. It is, what I love is the detail. Look at the detail in that bike. Just bring it up nice and close so that you can see that. I think the pattern is brilliant. Hats off to the designer. And in the pattern they have for the Harley, the Honda, the Suzuki, and the Yamaha. So if you have a pattern to knit for someone special, as I do, you want to check out this purchase pattern on Ravelry. I will tell you I am using the Estelle Superwash Merino DK. I like this yarn for color work because it's a real round yarn. And the main color I'm using this time, last time I used a black, this time my main color is a steel gray, and the colorway is Q40303, and you need one ball, 50 grams of that. Then you also need some white, and in this case I have used Q40301, again an Estelle Superwash DK. This was in my stash. And I'm also using the orange, and this one is Q40334. And the last one that I'm using is Debbie Bliss DK Rialto, and this was also in my stash. So none of this yarn is new. Again, it's October and I am stash busting. So I'm trying to use up what I have. Or I was trying to use up what I have. I still am. It's November and I'm still going to be trying to persevere and use up all these little bits. But I record all of my yarn when I purchase it and I place it in Ravelry, and then as I use it for each project, I weigh it and I identify how much was used in each project so that I know, and then it deducts it. And so when I go to my stash, I can see exactly how much I have left. I can go to a former project, see how much yarn I've used. And I went to the last Harley Davidson hat and I saw how much I used. I went to my stash and I saw I had enough of everything to be able to do this again. So it was a perfect stash buster, and I'm working my way through this piece that is going to be a birthday gift for someone special. So if you have someone who loves motorcycles, it is the motorcycle hat and it's on Ravelry. It's a purchase pattern. This concludes my knits and latest WIP for the month of October. Thanks for joining me, everyone. If you have a chance, leave a comment below, share what's on your needles. Most of my projects are inspirations from other knitters, and I would love to be inspired by something that you are creating at this time. So it is now November. I'll see you next month in December. In the meantime, be well, be happy, and happy Thanksgiving to our American friends. Bye.